Welcome back to session 0. Today I want to add a couple new acronyms to the list that I've been growing over the past several years. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let me go back in time and show you all of my acronyms. These acronyms are a way to help you build certain concepts within games in a way that isn't overly mechanical. So we're going to start with aims for NPCs. That was agenda, ideals, mannerisms, and secret. Again, this is a way to build an NPC without worrying too much about mechanics and just getting down to what that NPC is all about. Next, I gave you land for making locations. This, again, lets you use some descriptive text, some ideas rather than building mechanical things. A location name might be Arkham Asylum, and then areas within that can be receiving, holding, patient cells, etc. Natives are going to be your NPCs and monsters that reside in that area. And then you get your description and details with the D. Again, a way to create a thing with ideas rather than mechanics. Next we have what. I haven't talked about this one too much on the channel, but what is for encounters. Who and where is the W. How it relates to the story is the H. A lot of times, you might have a cool encounter idea, but I always like it to relate to the story going on. It's just not a random occurrence. Even if it's just a dungeon they just happen to decide to go into, I still like it to relate to the story, whether it's the overarching story or a particular NPC's story. A for action, what's going on as the characters engage with this encounter. And then T is theme and trappings. Another way to, again, give it details without it being overly mechanical, at least at this stage. I've actually done 2 videos on facets because I kind of changed what I was doing with it. But facets is for characters, and I've used this to write characters for fiction as well. Flaw, ambition, who or what do you care about? Enemy or enemies, a treat, which is just something fun and neat about your character, and a character's secret. And again, this is just concepts of your character. There's nothing mechanical here. This isn't a character sheet. This is just helping you drill down into what you want your character to be. And before I move on to the first new acronym, I want to talk really quickly about how I use these. I don't go down the list like a checklist. Okay, I have an agenda, I have an ideal. Jump around with these different acronyms. You might have a really cool idea for a secret for an NPC and build everything else around it. You might have a mannerism that you really want to highlight for an NPC. Start there and then draw inspiration for the other parts of it. With land, you don't have to create all of the areas all in one go. You don't have to create all of the natives all in one go. Whatever you come up with, put it down, and then that's a part of that location. You can add more later, you can take stuff away later. It's not a checklist that you have to fill out in order to finish. And I think that's especially important with facets. Characters grow and change. You might start with an ambition in mind and then it changes through play. They might have a secret that ends up becoming open knowledge. It's no longer a secret if everyone knows about it, so you can go back and create a new secret later. And that really flows through all of the acronyms. They're not checklists, they are containers that you can fill and take away from at any time to make the whole better. So now we're going to go into the first of today's new acronyms. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I've been playing World of Dungeons, and this is an acronym for building dungeons. Ruins for dungeons is really interesting. We start with risks, and again, you don't have to start with risks, that's just the R. And primarily this came about because in playing World of Dungeons, I like to state the risk before making the roll, and it helps to know some general risks associated with a dungeon. Now, risks can also be themes. They can speak to your themes, but themes can also speak to your risks. That's really going to follow through the rest of this acronym. Again, it's not a checklist to go down. you are going to maybe write something a little bit later that makes you think, oh yeah, this would be a good risk to go with that. The U is unsettling. Now that doesn't mean every dungeon has to be a horror dungeon, but there should be something unsettling in there that makes the character's hair stand on end, or makes them wonder, what the hell am I even doing here? That's unsettling, an unsettling detail to get under the character's skins. Next is intended purpose. Why was this built? And especially if you're creating dungeons on the fly with like Axebane's Deck of Many Dungeons, the rooms on there can be pretty samey. So knowing the intended purpose of a dungeon helps you know what those rooms were used for and how they may have changed between what they were used for initially and what they're being used for now. So I love the idea of knowing why a particular dungeon was built, and then I can, internally know what those rooms are used for when I'm playing. Just like with the land acronym, N is for natives. Again, this tells you who lives here, be it monsters, be it NPCs, etc. Natives are just the people who inhabit that dungeon. And you probably think you know what the S is, but I'm going to tell you you're wrong. S is for story. What is the story of this dungeon? You know why it was built, you know what it was intended to do. What has changed between it being built and now? What is this dungeon's story? When taken together, risks, unsettling, intended purpose, natives, and story, you can really dig into a dungeon without even knowing what it looks like yet. And I think that's really powerful, especially with something like Axebane's Deck of Many Dungeons. You're generating it on the fly, but you know quite a bit about the dungeon, and it really helps role-playing to know those things in advance and not have to come up with them on the fly. A lot of my role play is just coming up with something on the fly, and if I had made this Ruins acronym before recording those last 2 sessions with Vellum, I think those would have come out a lot better. So that is my first new acronym. It's for dungeons, it's Ruins. Let's go to the second new acronym. It is Monster, and you guessed it, that is for creating monsters. But again, not the mechanical portions of a monster, just some of the concepts. Although I am going to dip a little bit into mechanics as I continue. It is not on the M though. M is a bit of a cop-out, it's the monster name. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean zombie, skeleton, goblin. This helps you create specific instances of different types of monsters. So give a monster type a specific name. The O is for organization, and this really harkens back to Dungeon World. They have solitary, I've got single, but you could also use solitary, group, etc. How do these monsters organize themselves? What are these monsters' needs? What do they need to survive? Are they kidnapping people from the local village and turning them into food? Are they hoarding gold for the dragon they serve, etc.? Knowing what their need is helps to define what their actions are going to be. Monsters live outside the need for player characters to go beat them up. They are doing a thing, and the need speaks to the thing they're doing. Now we get to an S, which is secrets. What are the secrets of this monster? You can go anywhere with this. You can do a lot of things. Just make sure it makes sense within the story you're telling. Giving monsters secrets again, help flesh them out more than I'm a monster standing in the way of a PC. T is the type, so where monster name was a specific monster within a type, the T defines that type. So, you might have 3 different tribes of goblin. So their name could be Tribe A Goblin, Tribe B Goblin, and then their type is Goblin. What the type does is mentally prepare you for what this monster is. Monsters have certain archetypes, just like any other thing. So a goblin already tells you, okay, they're short, they're green, there's probably a bunch of them, etc. Monster name and type, they are different. They help further define the monster. E is the essentials. This is where I dip a little bit into mechanics. The more rules light a system is, the easier this section is to complete. Dungeon World, the monsters are pretty simple. World of Dungeons, they're even more simple. So in Essentials here, you can write, D6 plus 1 damage. They have 1 armor, 2 hit dice, etc. Just a way to really help you define those, and especially in really low rules games, this is an invaluable field because you don't have to build a huge stat block. All you have to do is say, okay, a little bit of damage, 1 armor value, the 2 hit dice, etc. And now not only do you know how the monster is organized, what they need, what type they are, you can immediately see what their mechanics are, what their stat line would look like. R is risks. Again, this goes back to my play of World of Dungeons. Knowing some of the risks associated with monsters helps you in role-playing them because, again, with World of Dungeons, you want to define the risk before you make your roll. A risk is obviously, they have a big sword, but go a little bit deeper than that. The risks of this particular type of goblin is if they bite you, they could infect you with a disease. Or this particular goblin type is really fast. So a risk is when you attack, they could parry your attack in such a way and send you tumbling to the ground. These risks go beyond their stat line. These risks are special things they can do. So those are the 2 new acronyms, Ruins and Monster, and I'm going to give you a fun example of both that I've been working on. All right, so let's start with a dungeon using the Ruins acronym. This is the Ash Vault. Some of the risks are a thin layer of ash covers the walls and floor, making them slick, and thick black smoke wafts through areas, making sight and breathing difficult. Something unsettling about this dungeon is ash eaters, which I'll describe in the next example, lick the walls and floors. Intended purpose, it was built as a repository of knowledge and spells of the ancient world. The natives are the ash eaters. And the story, when the repository was first built, scholars and wizards from across the continent came to learn what they could. One wizard, his name lost to time, found what he was looking for, powerful fire magic. But it was beyond his ability to control. The out-of-hand spell ashed every book and person in the dungeon. So now we'll take a look at the Ash Eaters. Monster name, Ash Eater. Organization, single. There are many, but they stick to themselves. Need, they need ash to survive. Secret. The souls of those ashed in the Ash Vault coalesced into Ash Eaters, which eat ash to survive and learn. By eating the ash, they learn the magic and knowledge of every person or book which created the ash they've just eaten. Type, zombie. Again, the type field helps you with an archetype. It's a zombie, so it's probably slow, it lumbers, it might swipe at you with a clawed hand, it might bite you, etc. Essentials, D4 minus 2 damage. I did this because of some of the risks, which I'll talk about in a second. 0 armor and 2 hit dice. Risks. Anyone who takes damage from an Ash Eater's physical attack may become infected by the Ash Blight, which slowly turns them into ash, to be eaten by Ash Eaters. And the second risk, Ash Eaters cast magic and use skills they knew in life or learned by eating ash. And that's a neat little dungeon I know quite a bit about, even though I don't know what it looks like yet. I am going to explore this dungeon using Axebane's deck of mini dungeons, but anytime a monster comes up, I'm going to use an Ash Eater, and anytime the rooms come up, I know really kind of what that room looks like. I know what hallways might look like. They're going to be covered in ash. Smoke might be there or wafting through an area, etc. So those are my 2 examples, the Ash Vault and Ash Eaters, using my 2 new acronyms. Join me next Saturday as I create a character to run through this dungeon and then do so using Axebane's deck of mini dungeons. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great day.